It was a cold morning when Keanu Reeves first saw the twins standing barefoot outside a small bakery. On the corner of a quiet street, the air was biting, and their tiny feet were red from the chill. They looked about 8 or 9, thin as paper, their cheeks hollow, yet their eyes held a light that begged not for pity, but for hope. Keanu had come out early that day, hoping to clear his head with a walk before his next shoot. He wore his favorite worn-out boots, the ones he kept for times when he wanted to feel connected to the real world. As he approached the bakery, he noticed the twins whispering to each other, their hands pressed against the glass window. Inside, warm loaves of bread sat waiting for customers who would never understand what true hunger felt like. One twin, the boy with a small scar above his eyebrow, turned to Keanu with a desperate bravery that only the forgotten learn to carry. "Mister, would you trade your shoes for a loaf of bread?" The boy's voice trembled, but he held it steady for his sister, who clutched his arm like it was the only thing keeping her standing. Keanu paused. His heart thudded heavily in his chest. He could see the frost on their toes. He could see the shame in their downcast eyes, the way they tried to look brave even when the world had shown them nothing but cruelty. Instead of answering right away, Keanu crouched down to their level. He looked into the boy's eyes and then to the girl's. They were so alike, yet he could sense they carried different kinds of pain. The girl's tiny hands hid behind her brother's coat, as if the world was too big for her. "Why your shoes?" Keanu asked softly. His voice was warm, like sunlight trying to push through a storm. The boy hesitated. The sister looked away, blinking back tears. Finally, the boy spoke again. "We sold Mama's blanket yesterday. We thought we could get food, but it was not enough. Now we have nothing but these shoes, but they do not fit. They belong to our papa. He is gone." The boy's lips quivered, but he did not cry. Keanu felt something inside him twist painfully. These were not just shoes. They were a memory, a goodbye that had come too soon for two young souls. Keanu took off his gloves and held the boy's small hand in his. The skin was rough, cold, and he could feel how thin the bones were. "Where is your mama now?" he asked. Though part of him feared the answer, the boy looked down. The sister squeezed her brother's hand tighter. "She is sick. She is in the old shed behind the factory. It is cold. We cannot find wood to keep the fire going." The boy's words fell like stones, heavy and sharp. Keanu felt anger rising inside him, not at the children, but at the world that could let two innocent lives suffer like this. The bakery door swung open then, and the smell of warm bread wrapped around them like an embrace they could not touch. The baker, a stout man with flour on his apron, stepped out. He looked annoyed at first, then surprised when he saw Keanu kneeling with the children. "These kids bother you, sir?" the baker asked, eyeing the twins like they were stray dogs scratching at his door. Keanu stood slowly, his calm eyes meeting the baker's with a quiet firmness. "No, they are not bothering me," Keanu said. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his wallet. He handed the baker a few bills, enough to buy more than bread. "Give them what they want. Fresh bread, milk, maybe some fruit if you have it." The baker nodded, taking the money reluctantly. The boy's eyes widened. He looked up at Keanu, unsure whether to smile or run. The girl hid her face in her brother's coat again, too shy to meet Keanu's kind gaze. "Thank you, mister," the boy said, his voice barely above a whisper. But Keanu was not done. He placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. "I want to see your mama," he said. The boy flinched, his small shoulders stiffening. "Please, take me to her. I promise I will not hurt you. I want to help." For a moment, the world stood still. The boy looked at his sister. She nodded slowly, her eyes wide, trusting. Together, they took Keanu's hands and led him away from the warmth of the bakery into the frozen streets, past houses that turned their windows away, past people who lowered their eyes and hurried by dot as they walked. Keanu felt the snow seep through the cracks in his boots, but he did not care. He kept his eyes on the twins, watching how they leaned on each other, two fragile souls trying to survive in a world that had forgotten how to care. And as they turned the corner and the crumbling factory came into view, Keanu knew deep in his bones that this was not just an act of kindness. This was something bigger. something that would test his own heart in ways he never imagined. And somewhere deep inside, he felt a quiet promise take root. He would not walk away from these children. Not today. Not ever. The walk to the old factory felt longer than it really was. Keanu held the twins' tiny hands, feeling how cold they were even through his own warm touch. The boy, who finally told Keanu his name was Sammy, walked ahead, trying to look braver than he felt. His sister, Maya, kept glancing back at Keanu as if checking if he was real, if he would vanish like all the other good things they once had. The factory loomed ahead, a skeleton of rusted metal and broken windows, standing like a forgotten giant in the middle of the city's shadows. Behind it, barely hidden by piles of scrap wood and old tires, was a shed that looked more like a pile of rotting boards nailed together. Sammy pushed open the squeaky door. The smell of damp wood, cold, ash, and sickness hit Keanu's nose instantly. Inside, a thin figure lay on a pile of rags, covered by a torn blanket that barely reached her shoulders. The woman's breathing was shallow, her eyes closed, her lips cracked from thirst. Maya ran to her mother's side, curling up beside her like a kitten trying to give warmth it didn't have. Sammy stayed near the door, his shoulders stiff, as if he feared bringing a stranger inside this fragile world. Keanu stepped in carefully, ducking under a broken beam. He looked around. The place was empty of almost everything except a rusty tin can that held a few dying embers. No food, no clean water, no sign that anyone had come to check on them in days, maybe weeks. Keanu knelt beside the mother and touched her forehead gently. It burned under his fingertips. Fever. He knew this look. He had seen it once before, long ago when he had nothing but a suitcase and a heart full of worry for his own sick mother. She needs a doctor, Keanu said softly. Sammy flinched, his voice rising sharp with fear. No hospital. They will take us away. They will take Maya from me. His eyes filled with tears he refused to let fall. They say we are not safe with Mama sick. Keanu looked at the boy's trembling hands. He saw the scars of too many cold nights, too many empty plates. He understood. The system could be cruel. Families like theirs slipped through its cracks every day. Keanu sat on the cold ground and spoke quietly, so Maya could hear to listen. I will not let anyone take you away, but your mama needs help or she will not wake up. I promise you, Sammy, I promise you, I will not let anyone break your family apart. Sammy's chin trembled. He wiped his nose with the back of his sleeve and looked at his mother, who let out a weak cough that made Maya cling to her tighter. Can you carry her? Sammy asked. His voice was so small, so tired. Keanu did not hesitate. He stood, took off his coat, and wrapped it around the woman's fragile body. He lifted her carefully, feeling how light she was, to light. Maya clutched her mother's hand even as Keanu carried her out into the snow. Sammy grabbed a thin scarf from the corner and wrapped it around his sister's shoulders. They stepped back into the cold world together. Keanu called for a cab with his phone, ignoring the driver's surprised look when he saw a famous actor standing barefoot in the snow, a sick woman in his arms, two ragged children at his side. They climbed in, the heater blasting warmth they had not felt in days. Maya pressed her cold cheek to Keanu's arm. She did not speak, but she did not let go either. When they arrived at a small clinic, Keanu paid the driver and carried the mother inside. The nurse at the front desk looked confused, then alarmed as she saw the woman's condition. Sammy and Maya huddled together on a bench while Keanu explained everything to the doctor, as much as he could without risking the children being separated. The doctor, a kind woman with tired eyes, promised to keep everything quiet. She has pneumonia, she said after a quick examination. She needs warmth, rest, food, and the right medicine. It will be slow, but she can recover if we act now. Keanu nodded, relief flooding him even as his mind raced ahead. He looked at Sammy, who sat hunched over, staring at the floor as if he expected the world to take something else from him at any moment. He looked at Maya, who had fallen asleep curled up on her brother's side. In that moment, Keanu realized something deep inside him. This was no longer just about bread or shoes or even medicine. This was about trust, about showing to children that not everyone who says they care will disappear when the sun comes up. He sat beside Sammy and placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. "Do you believe me now?" Keanu asked. Sammy looked up, his eyes tired but brighter than before. He nodded once. Keanu gave him a small, kind smile. "Good. Because tomorrow, we are going to get you both warm clothes, shoes that fit, and a safe place to sleep. Your mama will have food when she wakes up. I promise you, Sammy. I will not let you go hungry again." The boy's lips trembled. This time, he did not hold back the tears. They slipped down his dirty cheeks, washed away only by the warmth of hope. And outside, the snow kept falling, but inside that small clinic, for the first time in a long time, the cold could not touch them. Keanu barely slept that night. He sat on an old chair in the corner of the small hospital room, watching over Sammy, Maya, and their mother as they rested. The clinic was quiet except for the steady hum of the heater that kept the cold at bay. Every now and then, Maya would stir in her sleep and reach out to make sure her brother was still beside her. Sammy, even as he dozed off, held her hand tightly, like an anchor that kept them from drifting too far apart. When dawn crept in through the frosted window, Keanu stood and stretched his stiff back. The mother was breathing easier now, her fever coming down bit by bit. The nurse came in with a bowl of soup and some warm bread. Maya woke first, rubbing her sleepy eyes. When she saw Keanu still there, she gave him the tiniest smile. One that made every sleepless hour worth it. "You stayed," she whispered. Her voice was soft, fragile like a bird's wing. Keanu knelt beside her bed. "I promised I would, didn't I?" he said gently. He helped her sit up and handed her the warm bowl. She cupped it in her small hands, letting the steam warm her chilled fingers before taking careful sips. Sammy woke next, startled at first, then relieved to see his mother still breathing and Keanu by his side. The boy's eyes flickered to the door, as if expecting someone to burst in and take all this away. Keanu saw it, that fear of good things disappearing. "Come on," Keanu said, ruffling Sammy's hair. "Eat something. We have a big day ahead." Sammy ate quickly, glancing at his mother every few bites to make sure she was still there. When the doctor came to check on her, she nodded at Keanu. "She is stable for now, but she needs rest and proper care. She should stay here a few more nights at least." Keanu thanked the doctor and turned back to the twins. "Okay, little heroes, today we're going shopping." Sammy's eyes widened. "Shopping? For what?" "For you." Keanu said simply. "New shoes, warm coats, food to take back with us, things you need to feel safe." Sammy hesitated. "But we don't have any money." Keanu smiled. "I do. And you don't have to trade your papa's shoes for bread ever again. Your papa wouldn't want that, would he?" Sammy shook his head quickly, eyes dropping to the floor. They took a cab to a small store outside the city, far from the fancy places where Keanu might be recognized. He wanted the twins to feel normal, like any other children buying new shoes. For winter, when they arrived, Maya clung to Keanu's coat, peeking around him at the rows of boots, coats, and colorful scarves. Sammy walked ahead slowly, his eyes wide, but his shoulders tense, like he couldn't believe any of this was real. "Go on," Keanu said, gently nudging Sammy forward. "Pick out whatever you like. Warm boots, thick socks, anything." Maya tugged at Keanu's sleeve. "Can I get pink ones?" she asked in the tiniest voice. Keanu laughed softly. "Yes, princess. Pink ones. Maybe even with sparkles if you want." Sammy chose a sturdy pair of brown boots, a size too big so they would last longer, and a thick winter coat. Maya picked bright pink boots with tiny flowers stitched into the sides. She ran her fingers over them like they were made of gold. They stopped at a small grocery store next. Keanu let Sammy and Maya choose fruits, bread, and warm drinks. Maya picked a box of cookies and looked up at Keanu shyly, waiting for him to say no. Instead, he chuckled and dropped the cookies in the basket himself. When they stepped out into the street again, Sammy's hands were full of bags, but his eyes shone brighter than they had since Keanu first saw him. They walked past a shoe store window, and Sammy paused. There, on display, was a pair of shiny black dress shoes. They looked nothing like the old shoes they had tried to trade for bread. "What is it, Sammy?" Keanu asked. Sammy didn't answer at first. He looked at Maya, then at Keanu. "Those look like Papa's shoes when they were new," Sammy said softly. "He wore them on special days." His voice broke a little, but he didn't look away. Keanu crouched down beside him. "You miss him a lot, don't you?" Sammy nodded. "What was he like?" Keanu asked. Sammy's eyes filled with tears, but he wiped them away quickly. "He was brave," Sammy said, "and he always told me to protect Maya. He said I was the man of the house now." Sammy's shoulders hunched, like the weight of those words was too much for such a small boy. Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder. "He would be proud of you, Sammy. You're brave too, and you've protected Maya better than anyone else could." Sammy sniffed and nodded. For the first time, he let Keanu hug him properly. They spent the rest of the day walking through the city, the kids warm in their new clothes, their bellies full for the first time in days. But as the sun began to set, Sammy grew quiet again. Maya fell asleep in the cab, her head resting on Keanu's arm, clutching her pink boots like a treasure. "What is it, Sammy?" Keanu asked when he saw the boy staring out the window. Sammy's voice was barely a whisper. "What if Mama doesn't wake up?" Keanu's heart twisted. He reached over and held Sammy's hand. "She will. She's strong, like you. And if she needs more help, I'll be right here. You are not alone anymore, Sammy. I promise." And for the first time since that cold morning at the bakery, Sammy closed his eyes and leaned his head on Keanu's shoulder, letting the world feel safe, even if just for a moment. When they returned to the clinic, night had already settled over the city like a heavy blanket. The cab's headlights cut through the darkness, shining on the snow that piled higher than it had the day before. Sammy stirred awake just as the car pulled up. Maya was still fast asleep, her face pressed into Keanu's side, her tiny hands clutching her new boots like she feared someone might take them away. Keanu gently lifted Maya into his arms. Sammy gathered the bags of food and clothes, holding them close like they were more precious than gold. They stepped back inside the clinic, and the warmth felt like stepping into another world. A small pocket where the cold and fear couldn't reach them. Inside the room, their mother lay sleeping, her breathing more steady now, her skin no longer looked so pale, and the fever that had burned her up was finally fading. The nurse, a kind older woman named Mrs. Anaya, looked up from her paperwork and gave Keanu a tired but grateful smile. "She's stronger than she looks, Mrs. Anaya said, nodding at the mother. "She keeps waking for a few moments, asking for her children." Sammy hurried over to his mother's side. He set down the bags and took her hand, whispering softly. Maya stirred when Keanu laid her next to her mother, and even half asleep, she curled up close, her tiny fingers reaching for her mother's cheek. Keanu stepped back, watching the fragile scene unfold. In that moment, something deep in his chest cracked open, a memory of his own mother lying weak in a hospital bed. Years ago, her eyes searching for him, for a sign that they would be okay. He remembered how helpless he felt, how much he wished someone would appear and promise him it would all be fine. He had survived it, but he had done it alone. These children wouldn't have to. Hours passed, and the clinic quieted down. The mother woke for a few minutes, her eyes glassy but warm when they landed on her children. She tried to speak, but her voice was dry, a hoarse whisper. Keanu stepped closer, offering her a sip of water. "Thank you," she rasped, her eyes blinking slowly as she looked at him. Who are you?" Keanu hesitated. For a moment, he thought about giving his real name, but something stopped him. It didn't matter if she knew he was an actor. What mattered was that she knew he was there for them. "My name is Keanu," he said softly. "I saw Sammy and Maya yesterday. They asked me for bread. They told me about you. I couldn't walk away." A tear slid down her cheek. Her cracked lips trembled as she reached for his hand. "No one ever stops. They all just look away. But you didn't." Keanu squeezed her hand gently. "You rest now. Your children are safe. They're warm. They have food. We'll keep it that way, I promise." Her eyes drifted shut again, but her breathing was calmer, her face peaceful. As Maya snuggled closer, murmuring in her sleep. The next morning, Keanu returned with a surprise. While the twins stayed by their mother's side, he had found a small apartment just 2 blocks from the clinic. It was old but clean, with a working heater and a tiny kitchen. He used his connections to arrange for it to be rented under his name so no questions would be asked that might risk the family being split up. When he told Sammy about it, the boy looked at him like he was seeing a miracle. "A real home?" Sammy asked, his voice so small it almost broke Keanu's heart all over again. "Yes, Sammy," Keanu said, smiling softly. "A real home. And I'll help you fix it up. You'll have warm beds, food in the fridge, and a door that locks to keep you safe. No more sleeping in sheds." Sammy threw his arms around Keanu's waist, burying his face in his coat. The boy didn't say thank you, because there were no words big enough for what he felt. But Keanu felt it all the same. A few days later, when their mother was strong enough to sit up, Keanu helped move them into the tiny apartment. Maya squealed when she saw her new bed, just a small mattress with clean sheets and a blanket, but to her, it was a castle. Sammy ran his hands over the stove, turning the knobs like they were magic. Their mother sat on the edge of her bed, tears streaming down her face as she looked around the tiny, warm room. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered, her voice still weak but stronger than before. Keanu sat beside her, his eyes kind and steady. "Just get better. Take care of them. That's enough for me." The days that followed were filled with simple joys that felt like treasures. Maya giggling as she brushed her new pink boots, Sammy helping Keanu fix a broken cabinet door, their mother slowly regaining her strength, her smile returning bit by bit. Every night before he left, Keanu would kneel by the twins' beds, tucking them in, reminding them that he would come back the next day. And every night, as he walked home through the snow, Keanu felt something warm flicker inside him, something he hadn't felt in a long time. He wasn't just helping them survive, he was showing them they were worth fighting for. And maybe, just maybe, he was finding a piece of his own broken heart healing too. Weeks passed, and the cold winter slowly began to loosen its grip on the small corner of the city where Sammy, Maya, and their mother now called home. The tiny apartment, once bare and quiet, began to feel alive with warmth, laughter, and a hope that grew stronger every day. Keanu kept his promise. He visited them almost every evening, no matter how busy his filming schedule got. Sometimes he brought books for Sammy to read, colorful storybooks for Maya to look at while she sat on her mother's lap. Other times, he brought groceries, always slipping in a sweet treat that made Maya's eyes light up like tiny stars. Sammy became Keanu's little shadow. When he wasn't helping his mother or looking after Maya, he would stand by the window, waiting for the sound of Keanu's boots on the stairs. When Keanu arrived, Sammy would jump up and run to open the door, his shy smile growing wider with every visit. One evening, Keanu arrived with something tucked under his arm, a showbox wrapped in old newspaper. Sammy's eyes widened as he looked at it, his mind flickering back to that day when he and Maya had tried to trade their father's shoes for bread. He swallowed hard, memories mixing with the present in a way that made his chest ache. Keanu sat on the worn sofa, patting the seat beside him. "Come here, Sammy. This is for you." Sammy sat, glancing at his mother, who nodded encouragingly. Maya climbed onto Keanu's other side, her tiny fingers reaching for the box. Keanu carefully unwrapped the newspaper, revealing a pair of small, sturdy black dress shoes. They were simple but new, with smooth leather and strong stitching. Sammy's mouth fell open. He touched them with the tips of his fingers, afraid they might vanish if he blinked. "These look like Papa's shoes," Sammy whispered. Keanu nodded. "They do, but they're for you. I want you to have something that reminds you that even when times are hard, you're not alone anymore. Your Papa would want you to stand tall in your own shoes. These are just the beginning." Sammy looked up at Keanu, his eyes glistening. "But I didn't trade anything for them," he said, his voice small. Keanu smiled softly and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You gave me something better than shoes, Sammy. You trusted me. You showed me how strong you are. That's worth more than anything money can buy." Maya leaned her head against Keanu's arm, hugging the showbox as if it were a treasure chest. Their mother wiped away a tear with the corner of her sleeve. "You've done so much for us," she said quietly. "How can we ever repay you?" Keanu shook his head. "You don't owe me anything. Just keep moving forward. Keep loving each other. That's enough." In the days that followed, things got brighter. Sammy started going to a small local school. He was shy at first, but every day, he came home with a new word he'd learned or a story about the other kids. Maya stayed home with her mother, helping her fold clothes or carry tiny buckets of water from the tap down the hall. She would sit by the window every afternoon, waiting for Sammy to return, and greet him with a hug that made the long school hours feel worth it. One afternoon, Keanu surprised Sammy by picking him up from school. The boy's eyes widened when he saw Keanu leaning against the brick wall outside, wearing his old boots and a warm smile. "Ready to walk home?" Keanu asked. Sammy nodded eagerly, slipping his hand into Keanu's. As they walked, Sammy's new shoes crunched over the bits of leftover snow. He looked up at Keanu, the question he had been holding in his heart finally finding its way to his lips. "Why did you help us?" Sammy asked. "When you didn't even know us?" Keanu looked down at him, his steps slowing as he thought about how to explain something so big in words so small. "Because when I was your age, I wished someone would help me too," he said honestly. "And I promised myself that if I ever had the chance, I would help someone like you. Sometimes, kindness is just a promise you keep when no one else remembers." Sammy was quiet for a moment. Then he squeezed Keanu's hand, holding it tighter as they walked the rest of the way home. Back at the apartment, Maya was waiting by the window, her face lighting up when she saw them coming up the stairs. Their mother stood at the stove, stirring a pot of soup that smelled like warmth and hope. She looked stronger now, her cheeks no longer sunken, her eyes brighter. When Sammy stepped inside, Maya ran to him, giggling as she pointed at his new shoes. Keanu watched them, a soft smile playing on his lips. He knew there were still struggles ahead. Rent to pay, medicine to keep their mother healthy, cold nights that would come again next winter. But for now, they were warm, together, and safe. And sometimes, Keanu thought, that was all the world needed to feel right again. A tiny apartment filled with laughter, the sound of children's footsteps, and the promise that they would never have to trade their shoes for bread again. Spring came, slowly to the city, melting the last bits of snow that clung to the sidewalks where Sammy and Maya used to stand barefoot, pressing their hands to the bakery window. Now, when they walked past that same shop, they wore warm coats and sturdy shoes, shoes that fit, shoes that didn't have to be traded for bread ever again. Keanu still visited them as often as he could. Sometimes he came straight from a film set, his hair tousled, his clothes smelling faintly of makeup, and the long hours of pretending to be someone else. But here, in this tiny apartment filled with children's laughter and the smell of warm soup, he was just Keanu, not a star, not a headline, just a friend who kept his promises. One bright morning, Sammy tugged on Keanu's sleeve as they sat together on the cracked steps outside their building. Maya played nearby with a skipping rope, her giggles drifting up to the windows like music. Sammy's new shoes tapped against the stone step as he worked up the courage to speak. "Keanu," he said, his voice a little stronger than it used to be. "Do you think Mama will ever be strong enough to work again?" Keanu looked down at the boy. He was growing fast now, his cheeks not so hollow, his shoulders a little broader from good meals and good sleep. "I think she's already strong." "Sammy," Keanu said gently, "it just takes time to heal. And while she does, I'll be here. You'll be here. We'll all help each other." Sammy's eyes sparkled with something that looked like hope but deeper, steadier, trust that had taken root because Keanu had shown him, day by day, that he would never turn away. Weeks turned to months. Sammy did well in school, surprising his teachers with how quickly he caught up. He liked numbers the best. They made sense in a world that often didn't. Maya started drawing pictures on scraps of paper that Keanu brought her, filling them with flowers, stars, and tiny stick figures of her family. Her favorite drawing was of four people holding hands, a tall man with messy hair, a tired but smiling mother, a brave boy in shiny black shoes. and a little girl in bright pink boots covered in flowers. One evening, as the sun dipped below the city rooftops, the family gathered around the small wooden table that Keanu had helped them fix up. Dinner was simple: soup, bread, and fresh fruit, but it was more than they'd ever had before. Their mother looked at her children, then at Keanu, her eyes soft and full. "You gave us a chance to live again," she said, her voice steady now. "You didn't just save us from the cold, you saved us from disappearing." Keanu shook his head, smiling at her words. "You were never meant to disappear," he said. "Sometimes the world tries to hide people like you, good people. But you belong here. You belong together." Maya climbed into Keanu's lap, curling up like a kitten. "Will you stay forever?" she asked sleepily. Keanu brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I can't stay every night," he said honestly. "But I'll always come back, and you'll always have each other. That's forever enough. Don't you think?" Sammy looked across the table, his eyes clear and full of a quiet strength that had grown since that freezing morning. "Outside the bakery, you're like family now, Keanu," he said. "Papa's gone, but you help me remember him, and you help me be like him." Keanu felt a lump in his throat, the kind that came when words weren't enough. He reached out and took Sammy's hand. "And you remind me why I'm here," he said. "You remind me that even when things are dark, kindness can find its way through. And it's not about what we trade or give. It's about what we hold onto when the world wants us to let go." The room was quiet then. Not the silence of hunger or fear, but the soft hush of a promise kept. Outside, the city, lights flickered on, washing the streets in gold. Once, the twins had begged to trade shoes for bread. Now, they sat safe and warm, their feet covered, their bellies full, and their hearts steady. Keanu knew life would still test them. Bills would come, winters would return. Days would be hard sometimes, but he also knew that these small moments, Sammy's proud smile, Maya's giggles, their mother's steady breathing, would be enough to carry them through. Because they were more than just a family saved by a stranger's kindness. They were proof that a simple act, a warm loaf of bread, a sturdy pair of shoes, could be the beginning of something bigger than any cold winter could ever take away. And as Keanu closed the apartment door behind him that night, stepping back into the city's restless hum, he felt a quiet warmth in his chest, a reminder that sometimes the smallest footsteps could echo the loudest, carrying hope where it was needed most.